of course.
Okay.
And then tell us a little bit about that whole sort of initial process. Like there was your 4 co-founders, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they had a background, they've been funding startups before, and here was an AI startup and they needed the AI contingent into the founder family, so to speak. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so they had this idea, it's very AI first, right, to use AI to ensure quality. And then so they naturally wanted to speak to people that were working in the field, like if it was a good idea, if it was possible, and those kind of things. So that's how they kind of were. But that's why they were interested to me.
So they reached out to you, and I guess you had a mutual friend. You said.
Yeah, exactly. It's always good to have contacts.
Yeah, and then what was that starting conversation? How did this take us back to sort of fly on the wall?
Yeah, but the first conversation was very much about how you could potentially address this. Like, instead of how could you structure the problem in a way so that we could actually kind of execute it as an agent, essentially being kind of interacting with the web page. And we also talked a lot about like how to break down different things into components and how to validate them and kind of and all of this. So it was a lot of hypotheticals, but super interesting.
What really made you make the decision then to jump on the startup? Going from at least a rather safe place, I guess, to a rather
well, first of all, I really like building things. Like that's I think something that I've always wanted to do. So even in larger settings, and even at EQT Motherbrain, that was about like building that platform up, right? And after doing that for 7 years, I felt like ready to start building something new. Yeah.
Awesome. And if you were to just elaborate, you've been doing this for half a year now, or?
Yeah, exactly. So I was had this little grace period before I left EQT. So I started full time in November.
In November. So what's the difference then?
Yeah, that's the core question I was going for.
Yeah.
As well.
How do you feel it so far? Is it as you expected, or how does it feel?
It feels
sports commentator.
For me, it feels very liberating. I think like being a very small group of people building something together is exhilarating, and I think it also brings me a lot of energy. So even if you put a lot of time in and you spend a lot of time together, it's so much fun building things. So yeah.
And do you spend more time than before, you would say, or how?
It's probably the same, but it's more time on the building side and kind of thinking about how we should attack different kinds of problems in order to be able to build the product.
If you were still, I mean, if someone is listening to this, perhaps they are thinking, I have a lot of ideas for doing a startup, but there are a number of pros and cons, and perhaps it depends on where you are in life, etc. If you have kids or not, or how secure your economy is, and so forth. When or who would you recommend to actually go for a startup, and perhaps who would you not recommend to do it?
I don't know if I'm that person to say who shouldn't do things, but I think in general, if you have a drive to, if you really like kind of building things and you have this kind of inherent drive to do that, and you have that as a dream, I think you should go for it.
But I think more fair question is, what was your thought process? So you have you're living in
Täby.
You have Täby, family, and
I have 2 kids.
Two kids. Yeah. So so there's this whole spectrum from a trust junkie to a risk junkie, I guess.
Yeah.
And where do you put yourself on that scale, or what was your thought process to leave sort of, EQT Motherbrain is an awesome setup, of course, as well.
It is, totally. And it's been a tremendous journey, and I've been there for 7 years as well. So
So what was sort of your thought process, like, I need to take the leap now? How were you reasoning with your wife and stuff like this?
I think it's much about, like, finding things that you really love, and doing that like brings more joy, right? So I think for the family, it's also very important that we, both me and my wife, are talking a lot about this. Like, what can we do to kind of feel like we're living the life, right? That's kind of the thing. So this is one of the things that I've been wanting to do for a long time. So she's super supportive.
But could you sort of weigh risks, pros and cons? Did you have that Was that a deep conversation, or was it just, no, it's time to do it? I mean, like maybe you were done sort of thing, but 7 years is still also not long, but sometimes you feel like, okay, it's more about I have to do the next thing now. Or
yeah, exactly. And I think it was I think it boils down to me being more of a builder than a maintainer, right? Like we built this up, but it was essentially like a small startup inside of EQT, and we kind of scaled that to being 40 people and like a large organization. Yeah,
entrepreneur journey you did with Motherbrain.
Exactly, even though like maybe it's slightly less risky if you do it internally at a company, but you still have the same kinds of fights, and you have to kind of work with internal customers then instead. But,
I guess we already done a lot of the introduction here, but let's still go for the formal introduction and welcome you here.
Thank you
very much for the second time, Vilhelm von Ehrenheim.
Ehrenheim.
It's
the Swedish pronunciation, I guess.
Vilhelm von Ehrenheim. That's for the Oscars.
Thank you.
But you're here now as in a new role, right? And you were previously here as the head of the Motherbrain Intelligence, right? And at EQT, and now you actually started a startup.
Yeah.
And that's the focus for today as well.
Yeah. So I think if we did a portrait. Last time, do you have the number? What was the episode? If someone wants to go into more deeply understand Motherbrain, which is a super cool thing, and learn more about Vilhelm, let's look. You can look at that episode. But I think for this time, it's more of a theme, and of course we're talking about starting an AI startup in 2024.
45.
Episode 45.
That long ago.
Yeah.
Episode 45, and we are now at episode 117. Yeah, so now we have a topical pod, which is sort of an AI startup in 2024. How is that like? And with a very strong focus on AI-driven or AI-first in testing in software development.
Yeah.
And I think you can put an overarching theme is where is software development going end-to-end with AI? So that's the sort of the overarching theme now. So let's go into this. Was that fair?
And perhaps let's not repeat the whole background of you, but perhaps still for people to have a small feeling of who you are. How would you describe your background and interests?
Well, I've been working with AI in different kind of settings for most of my career. I studied engineering physics in Lund, and then I've worked for some time at Klarna, building their credit and fraud risk models, where they take automated decisions at time of purchase. And then now most lately at the EQT for building the Motherbrain platform from pretty much an idea.
You were more or less there from day one, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was number 3, so it was a full stack developer, manager, and me.
But you always also been focusing on AI, right? And
yeah, exactly.
Yes. And now you made the big jump then. And what's your title? You Chief AI Officer? Is that
exactly,
right? Yeah, cool. Is that becoming more and more of a common C-suite kind of title?
I've heard that it's becoming more and more popular, but it's I really like the idea of the title.
So so let's talk about your C-suite. You have a seat. How have you structured it? CTO and CPO, or how do you
exactly? We have CPO, CEO, AIO, and then COO as well.
Yeah. And have we mentioned what's the name of the startup?
QA.tech.
QA.tech. What's in that name?
Well, QA is for quality assurance.
Quality
right?
assurance.
Exactly, yeah.
QA.tech.
And yeah, we were discussing the name quite a bit, and I think naturally you would go for more like of this AI or something like that.
QAI.
Exactly, but it felt like QA.tech sounded better. It was nice and short, and felt like an interesting kind of name.
And should we put it into the test now and say, if you were to make an elevator pitch, like in 30 seconds, to say
The bar test.
The bar test.
The bar test or the elevator pitch of what is really QA.tech about?
So QA.tech is about testing like end products, so web platforms is its primary focus, and testing the functionality of the product. So we are developing autonomous agents that can interact with and try your product in different ways. So we do automatic discovery on the functionality, and then we ask the agents to perform different kinds of objectives. That could be stuff like logging in, signing up, changing billing information, or depending on what your product is doing the kind of main core things there, like adding a new customer if it's a CRM system, adding a new what pet if it's a pet platform or whatever.
We actually had an episode last week speaking specifically about autonomous agents, so it's rather nicely followed.
It's super nice that we are now on this path from rags to agents. And with my prediction is, and we're probably going to talk about it in Data Innovation Summit, how we need to frame agent thinking, right?
Yeah.
And here now we come to the concrete topic of agents in relation to quality assurance and testing of web applications.
Yeah, exactly. I think agents are all the rage for 2024, right?
This is what I said, right?
Yeah.
It's the year of the agents.
I gave a course in agent-oriented programming back in 2004.
Yeah, but it was not fucking hype then. I'm sorry, man. There is a market window, my friend.
Well, it's certainly picking up now, and I guess it's also making use of large language models and the recent rage in generative AI in different ways.
Yeah, so this is also a key topic then. This is to some degree also an approach which we will come into that is generative AI oriented.
Yeah, of course. I think, agents as a concept is super old, right? And more traditionally, you would phrase it as a kind of reinforcement learning problem, maybe, where the agent has to try a lot of different things and learn from that. But the problem is when you have a very open-ended kind of environment, that is very problematic because it's hard for the agents to adapt and kind of learn new things because they have this kind of value function inherent, right? But the large language models are opening up different kinds of approach because they have so much more world knowledge. Like if you, for example, were to have an agent that should learn how to open a door, it doesn't necessarily have to try and kind of knock on all of the places in the door before it accidentally touches the handle and then realizing that this is how you open a door. If you ask a large language models today, like if you just ask GPT,
how do you open a door?
Yeah, exactly. It would say just use the handle. Come on.
But if you were to try to do like a problem description of, what are companies potentially having a problem with that they could use autonomous agents to do some kind of quality assurance for, can you just describe why it's so difficult to do quality assurance without having your technology? Yeah,
I think first of all, it kind of breaks usually broken up into two different kinds of ways to handle this, and one is to do more kind of programmatic end-to-end tests, where you essentially hard code like a path through your application using a browser. So that would be like open this link, wait for 300 milliseconds, then you press this selector and so forth and so on. But the problem with that is when you develop a product, you change it all the time, and then the test will inherently fail. Like if you have a 100% test coverage of all of these things hard-coded, and you change anything, then a lot of the tests will break. Not because the functionality, your intended functionality is not functioning, but because the tests are kind of hard-coded.
And the variations that, because we will have blind spots.
Of course.
Because the developer will test what was the intention of the thing to do, but how to think about all the variations of what a user who has not understood what the purpose is will try to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other side of it is to use humans to test, and they are very slow and expensive, right? So asking a human to click about and kind of ensure that everything is working every time you do a release is very cumbersome, and it takes a very long time. So.
Okay, so comparing to the traditional way, either human testing, but let's focus like programmatic, like adding a set of actions or instructions to Selenium or some other, browser controlling software. How do you approach it differently? How if a new company wants to use your technology, what would they have to do?
Very little, because we intend to discover the functionality on the page and then instruct our agents to test that functionality. But we're focusing much more on the objectives rather than the actual kind of exact path.
Can you go through an example of?
Yeah. So the easiest one would be like login, right? So if you ask the agent to log in, it doesn't matter if you change the entire login process. If you start using Auth0 or something else, it will still work, right? Because the login functionality works. So the agent will try to do that and then evaluate whether or not the login is working. If all of these selectors and everything has changed since last time, it doesn't really matter.
So go a bit deeper now, because this is an interesting topic. How do you, if you take a login functionality, let the agent discover how to log in on the web page without having instructions in how to do so?
So we do discover like that there is a login form, right? And then we give it an objective that it should try to achieve, with some kind of examples of how it should think about evaluating it.
And using an LLM in some way?
Yeah, so we use LLMs to kind of both to construct the agent that is actually performing the actions, but then also in order to generate these kinds of objectives.
And I'm seeing or sensing that you're trying to hide some kind of the secrets, and please don't
be
afraid to say so if you
if
you want to keep some of the magic sauce secret. But okay, so you give it some kind of objective. You may have a starting point then, like a logging form that you provide, or
so the configuration for a new web page would be, if we're testing logging, but then would be to provide the link and of course correct authentication details. Otherwise, it can't actually log in. And then if the agent has that available, then what we're asking it to do is then it kind of goes into the web page. It looks at everything that is available there, and then has to kind of select what to do. Right.
So you provide to the prompt, to the LLM, the basically HTML code that you see, or JavaScript code that you see, or what?
No, yeah. Well, the HTML and the JavaScript is like two for both. And it's very non-specific, so we do a lot of pre-processing of the HTML before actually kind of providing it to the agent. But then when we have that available, it essentially provide it with a set of actions that it can do, and given this specific web page, and then it has to kind of select and kind of choose what to do given those tools that it has available, which would be to interact with the page and fill in information and those kind of things. It both has the possibility to kind of understand which actions are available, but also they could also kind of use a multimodal thing to understand how it looks and kind of interact with it from that.
So using information of the layout and the graphics as well, or what? Or how do you make it understand simply where to put the username of the logging form, so to speak?
So I mean, it essentially you could think of it like. The agent has this objective saying like, your objective is to log in with these provided credentials, and here is the set of actions that you can do. Then there could be like, click on this button, fill in this field that is kind of email, and fill in this field that is password, and like all of these things. And then it has to understand which ones to do in which order and figure that out. And that kind of brings it back a little bit to LLMs being really powerful at reasoning about things. So if you ask an LLM, like given you have these kind of different actions to that you can choose from, and your objective is this, what would you choose? Like, and then it does that and kind of fills in the information.
And for each action, is that manually provided, saying this is how you enter the username?
No, so the actions are provided as tools through the kind of OpenAI kind of function calling.
But what's your understanding and vision for the user experience here? Are you thinking about this to become something that someone can do on their own, or plug in and add, or how is the business?
So from the end user perspective, they don't have to do this at all. This is done by us on our platform, right?
Yeah, but let's take the scenario that someone is doing web application development, and they want to now use this service. So is this an engineering experience that you then set up for the typical testing engineers? Yeah, exactly. And they use this as a way.
Also, if you're building a web app as a developer, all you have to do is essentially put an integration in your CI/CD kind of workflow.
Okay.
And then and have some kind of staging environment, preferably. I mean, it could be a production environment, but usually you want to catch things before it goes to production, right? And then this would trigger like the set of tests that we have discovered on your webpage, and then the agent will try to do all of those.
Yeah, so it's a little bit, instead of doing programmatic testing that they have coded and they run that somewhere, at this point in time when you go to the software development cycle, you come to testing, and now we come to the last, user acceptance type testing. You are now plugging this into an API in your CI/CD workflow, that this then kicks in and then performs the tests.
Yes.
And then
if it breaks, it stops your kind of development.
And what is the experience result? What's the output? Is it that something breaks? So
you can see it like if you have GitHub Actions, for example, as your CI kind of pipeline, then you would have it kind of being read and saying like this is not functioning. You can click in, and then you get into our sauce,
which is more or less going straight back into the normal CI/CD flow you would have,
right.
Whatever you have thought that would be.
Yeah, exactly. And then you would click on that link, and you would get into our platform, and then you could see both the passing and the failing tests. But then in there you can see the steps and the reasoning that the agent has done, together with screenshots and recordings of the whole session. Right, so you can see like, okay, it's trying to fill in things, and then it clicks on login, and then it breaks.
So the result is not only a red line; it's actually like a playback of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And then we bundle that together with other kind of information that could be interesting, like network calls and
what happened in the background.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this becomes like a package that when you click on a problem that it's highlighted in the CI/CD process. This is red. You click on that, and then you go into your app. You get the package. This is the sort of the playback. This is the sort of the background data. Whatever that is in a neatly packaged. Here you go.
I mean, if you have a human QA tester. What they would normally provide is like maybe a screenshot if you're lucky, and like a description of it didn't work.
That is really random.
Yeah, exactly, right? So we want to be developer friendly here. So the idea is that it should get you enough kind of context in order to understand what went wrong.
Yeah, and you can actually, in very simple ways, give more data around the problem than a normal business tester could ever do.
Totally.
What's the business model of QA.tech?
So we're primarily focusing on B2B SaaS at this stage. I think in the longer horizon, we could probably kind of aim at any kind of web development at all. But it made sense for us to start somewhere, and I think having a tight ICP makes it easier to focus on specific problems.
ICP, what do you mean?
So initial customer profile.
Oh.
But it's interesting here because I can see how this goes into any web application development. Any web development, and I give an example. I mean, like working or discussing with a client, which is a very large sports retail brand. Typical setup, American company, a European head office, who then builds the whole sort of web CMS, the whole thing, the whole e-commerce suite, and this e-commerce setup that they use. It's done centrally in Europe, and then you have 20 different variations in different languages. And of course, what is supposed to work has never been tested in 20 languages and the different variations, right?
Exactly.
So is that a core is that an ISP, or is that outside of your ISP right now?
So
the
reason for us not focusing on those kinds, we spoke to some kind of potential e-com clients early as well, and I think they could definitely be a customer at this stage as well. It's easier for us to focus on some specific things, and when you look at a SaaS application, they generally kind of need to function on a specific kind of desktop application setting, and they're more similar to each other.
So you want to limit the variations here in order to stabilize.
Yeah, it's more about like building something successful and then kind of scaling from that, right? Yeah. So if you try to do everything at the same time, it's harder to focus. Yeah.
What do you charge for?
So we charge. We're pretty early, so we don't charge that much yet. But the idea is to charge per developer,
per developer.
A seat license to use the plugin tool.
Yeah.
To use the agent.
Do you have any? I think you mentioned you had a number of like beta customers or something.
Yeah.
Can you give some examples, some case study or some example customer that you can elaborate or just describe how they make use of your technology?
So all of them are using it from this kind of same kind of perspective as I said before. Like they have integrated it in their deployment pipelines,
Yes.
and they run the tests on their platform to kind of validate that it works before release. Yeah.
If you can you give some concrete customer example, or do you want to keep that
So
secret?
No. We have a kind of a customer called Fibble, one called Elative, we have one called Digital, and there are a few of those like smaller B2B sales kind of customers.
Yeah, and can you just from their point of view share potential value that they see? Is it that they don't have to write a test? Is it that they save time? Is it that they find more bugs? What is really the value that?
Exactly. I think it's a bit of both. I think first of all, you don't want to ship broken products, right? Yeah. Especially if you're a SaaS platform, that's your core product. It's very important that it functions and that your users are happy, right? And so that's one promise, that we can kind of ensure that it works better. Yeah. And then the other one is that since it is very time consuming with testing, like developer resources are pretty expensive. You don't want your developers to spend time on testing that what they did actually worked. You want them to spend time on building new interesting functionality, right? Yes. And also this the QA process in general is very slow and cumbersome, which also hinders like developer function or kind of efficiency, right? So the idea there is to make that process leaner and smoother, which I think will be very welcome both from the QA engineer kind of perspective. They can spend less time on kind of clicking the same button every day and more focus on like the process and the quality kind of thinking as a whole. And then from the developer standpoint, they don't get to kind of change context switch as much. They can get feedback much earlier on how well their stuff is actually working, and then ship more stuff.
Yeah. Can we zoom out a little bit now? Because I think we started by sort of going into understanding QA.tech, and we've been dissecting sort of, what are we actually talking about here? And if we zoom out, we're talking about AI first thinking around software development testing. And we are more specifically talking about the quality assurance part. So if we zoom out, from examples and what that all means, let's talk about software development testing. We can start from a quality assurance perspective, and then we can broaden it to software development and testing end to end. How do we see the evolution here? Where are we now, and what are the? You have clearly seen. Okay, there is a direction and path here. We are jumping onto it. So could you elaborate on what is the opportunity here that makes VC jump on it, pre-seed? That's an interesting one. Yeah. You had no problem getting pre-seed in this case. No. So could you elaborate a little bit about how big this, what is this really all about? So we sort of, because there's so much value in here, but sometimes when you go too detailed, it's like you don't see the big picture. Can we get a little bit out? I
think in general, I think everybody feels the pain of like broken web applications, right? It's very easy to relate to. Also, this is a huge industry. It's very, very kind of the QA industry in general is really big as well.
Yeah, what is the QA industry? Because could we put a number or frame on that? Because I know this.
I don't remember the number in my head now, but yeah, it is very big in general. Like both from an outsourcing perspective, but also having people kind of in your team. So usually, a very common setup is that when you have cross-functional teams, you would that develops these kinds of products, you would have like maybe one QA per 5 engineers or something like that, right?
Yeah. So if you think about this number, how many engineers, software engineers, how many software teams, and for every 5 software engineers, there's a QA guy. That's what we're talking about. Only looking at this topic, and I can relate to this basically on working with embedded in large clients like interim manager in Scania or line managers, working with the big the big consultancies, building up a team. How many QA engineers do we need to have? QA engineers in the team,
right?
This is hardcore. What we're talking about, that every single software team needs to take care of QA. Either you get people for it.
Yeah. If we were to just elaborate a bit more about QA, because QA is one thing, and testing could potentially be different. I'm just eager to hear your thoughts about this. Some people say QA is not only about making the software work, but also making the code or the architecture look good. do you agree with that, or what's the focus that you have for QA?
I alluded to that a little bit before, and I think if you're a QA engineer in a team and you kind of and you focus on the quality, I think doing repetitive testing, usually called like smoke testing, right, where you click things and ensure that they work, that's not your primary focus area, right? So you have to do it, and it takes a lot of time. So if we can take some of that away from them, and also kind of some of the discoverability on what they could actually test, would make it easier for them to kind of zoom out and look at the entire process instead.
So more focus on the quality, so to speak, and less on testing. Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So, speaking about testing in general, and to Henrik's point here about the whole process, and I guess the evolution of software testing in general, we can see that transitioning throughout the years in different ways. And I guess now with AI, as you have introduced, there are new ways to do testing, and but also to do coding, I guess, in some way.
Yeah, totally.
And if you were to just start to speculate a bit more, how would you say traditional testing have started to transition? It's a rather philosophical question, but still.
It is, but I think, like you said, like the development kind of experience for a developer today is very different than it was 2 years ago, right? So I think both in regards to people being able to produce much more quicker.
Yes.
But then also you could generate like unit tests more easily, and there's a lot of different things that helps that Gen AI can help you with.
And just to explain what you mean here, I mean it's rather easy today to have a function that you've written and just ask ChatGPT to write the unit test for it,
right?
And that produces a new pattern of working.
Yeah, exactly. And you have Copilot helping you actually write the function in the first place, and you kind of so people get to be much more productive, and maybe if a developer can do like 10x coding now than they could do before, but it's not necessarily the same when it comes to kind of end product testing though, right? So if you have like a team that before could do like so much, and then now they can do 10x more, but then the quality kind of insurance and those kind of things have to scale with that as well, right?
But let me test out where we are on the evolution now, and I have my hypothesis, and you can shoot me down. I propose to you that we are right now in 2024, February, to the point where on an individual performance basis, coders, developers are starting to pick these tools up as part of their repertoire, how they code. But have we truly moved into that the core workflow, the industrial view of this has changed? So is there a process change, or is it an individual way of working change where we are right now?
Well, I think it's mostly on the individual level. I think like when you think about like constructing an engineering team, like that's still pretty hard, and like making sure that they were building the right things, and kind of making sure that everything functions as a whole. So I think we'll see more evolution in that as well, as we see some tooling that comes out now that can help you generate like entire skeletons of projects, or even projects as a whole. But
do you agree with that view of where we are right now?
I guess one hypothesis you can make here, I mean, we have in a team that builds some kind of software product, a set of competences. It can be backend and database engineers, and it can be front-end engineers, and so much more. And it can be QA engineers. And one hypothesis would be that AI simply makes all of them more productive in some sense. And you can, as a database or DBA or database engineer or data engineer, simply use AI to produce code, but also to solve problems in a quicker way.
As individuals, like when they're at home coding, is that what we're talking about now?
Yes.
Yeah, but as teams as well, right? Like it kind of depends on what you're looking at. If it's easier to write kind of documentation about the stuff that you have kind of been building, it's easier to build code. It's easier to kind of get feedback and structure things. I think you would get more productive as a team. But it's AI is not really there that you can kind of look at everything that is happening within an engineering team and kind of.
But let me reframe. Let me try to.
Let me just finish the point.
Okay, sorry then.
So the point is, I mean, we have a set of people. They have different competences. AI makes all of them potentially more productive, including the QA person. And then now with your technology, I mean, one assumption could be that you try to remove the QA person, but that's not the case potentially. Perhaps your software makes a QA person even more productive simply.
Yeah, I think that at least those that we have spoken to so far are really welcoming this, because it takes away a pain point for them. And also, like, getting back to telling the developers in the team that their code is not functioning because they forgot something stupid. It's not necessarily the most fun in their kind of in their work, right? They want to think about the entire quality of the process instead.
Oh, cool. All right.
I was eating. But I was let me try to be sharp. This is my problem. Hypothesis. Is there a big difference between using AI to boost the individual level versus embedding the AI as part of the core SDLC or CI/CD workflow? So we are elevating the AI topic from where we're having the same CI/CD. Everything is the same, but we're all 10 times more productive because we are using our tools individually, versus the fundamentally AI-driven SDLC, software development lifecycle. I think there's my view, this must be a distinction here.
Yeah, there is definitely a difference. I think, but I think we'll see more and more of that emerging as AI kind of capabilities are evolving as well, right?
Yes.
Just being able to have suggestions of what code to write, like on a line basis, like Copilot is doing, was like unthinkable like a few years ago, right? And but now it's getting more and more kind of common, and everybody's using it.
But I guess another change could be, before you had a bit more separated responsibilities as people. You had one person doing the QA and other people, perhaps separate people doing testing separately, and then other people doing the database part separately. Perhaps one change, unless you simply, empower all of them individually, could be that they actually unite and have fewer people doing more stuff.
Yeah, I think totally, and I think
this is the point.
Yeah, I think that makes it easier to. It kind of bridges the communication gap, right? Like in general, what the problem when you have a lot of people involved in the same project is, it's very hard to keep everybody informed on what decisions we've made and how things look.
But this is a goosebump moment. A long time I used that word, because this is profound. Because we've been on a path, that first we're working in different disciplines, then we understand we need to have product teams. And the complexity of the product teams has kind of been growing, because you need your AI engineer, data scientist. No, not really. You need an AI engineer, data engineer, UX engineer, and now you need a QA tester. And all of a sudden now, the cost and the complexity of the product team has kind of been on a trajectory the last couple of years, with the complexity and the difference in technology, that you kind of, if you want to do AI driven, if you want to do what Spotify is doing, you kind of have an engineering manager, and then you have all these people, because no one can really master all of this. So with AI, are we now starting to combat the complexity of the sort of growing specialist team?
We had this question actually up for, I think, 1 year or 2 years ago. Right? And we were asking, will that just be an increasing number of specialized titles, roles that you get hired for?
You have to have them because it's so complex,
but perhaps not. And if you just take documentation, there were people that specialized in that and just wrote documentation for software and only did that. But perhaps now with AI generated documentation from the code, the totally. Normal, right?
Totally, and also like understanding like large APIs, right? It's very cumbersome, but you don't necessarily have to do that the same way anymore, because you could just ask an AI to help you. Right?
But because this is super important, right? So we have been pushing, and I think this has been one of the main divides between normal enterprise trying to do stuff versus real AI product oriented. I mean, like, you can't do, in my opinion, proper AI without having a product oriented approach, and if you go to large enterprise, their downfall has been they have a project steering. They treat it as a project, so they don't get this. Now, with this, it's actually starting to sort of make it simpler again for the rest of the world to catch up to what the hyperscalers has sort of done on nuts and bolts level and had to figure it out with in the end, you know. Who did we have who was the head of engineering manager for search in Spotify who was here? What's his name? I forget.
Oh, yes, I should know that. Anders Nyman.
Anders Nyman.
Yes.
Beautiful, right?
Yes.
Fantastic understanding to look at the core product of search within the Spotify platform and how they have organized that. And they have a CPO and they have an engineering manager. You know, it's a fairly large team with psychologists and all this.
Yeah.
And it's actually, that is the blueprint. But it's a ridiculous blueprint for normal companies, if you know what I mean.
I think potentially, and please disagree if you want, Vilhelm, that we've been seeing an increasing specialization in developer roles, and potentially with AI we can start to change that and have increasing generalization in developer roles. And some people are saying that the role of the developer is, you know, gone altogether in a number of years. I do not believe that.
Do not believe that either.
But potentially, at least, we will have a bit more general roles as a developer.
Yeah, I think you could do it already today, right? Like, even if I'm kind of not a front-end engineer or like a back-end engineer or a data engineer, I could just, with AI's assistant, accomplish things that I couldn't do before.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, say I have this application, I want to deploy it in Kubernetes. Like, how do I do it? What should I write in this kind of manifest and so forth? And then I can, with AI's help, like write that at least so it kind of functions, and then kind of bounce it back and forth and then solve the solution. Before it would take days, now I can do it in a few hours.
Because I don't think this is a real problem with the hyperscalers like the Klarnas and the real properly set up team from the beginning, like you start from scratch in Motherbrain with people who really knows what they're doing. But in the enterprise, this is really problematic, right? Because to really recruit and understand the complexity of these different roles has been a big burden,
Yeah,
I
totally.
think. And I think now one way of looking at this with AI is actually you need to have your specialist competences, but maybe you can do it a little bit different here.
I think it's easier to get started, and then and then it's easier to understand what you need in order to actually kind of take care of those things that you have generated that you can't take care of.
But then to be AI enabled, to be AI ready, then to dare to use these types of tools for the enterprise is actually part of the solution, you know, because because they now have the blockage. Oh, we don't dare to use this stuff yet.
Well, in general, also I think it's easy to either be kind of too tech focused or too kind of like little tech focused from the business perspective in larger enterprises. Like you have a lot of problems that could be automated or improved with technology, but if you kind of
Separate it.
If you separate it too much, like it's very hard. That's why the product kind of roles have been increasingly important, because they bridge that a little bit, right?
Yeah, and we in Daradox have been talking a lot about this in different conversations. We talk about the blind spots, and to sort of highlight the operational AI divide between the people in the know and the people learning still. And one of the key misconceptions, I think, is this sort of, we need to have 4 different competencies. And then you go in and look at how Spotify works, or where I hear from Anders, which is a co-creation of teams, competencies working together on a daily basis, versus this handover between roles in enterprise.
That's the promise of a cross-functional team, though, right? Yeah.
So cross-functional handover versus cross-functional true co-creation is 2 different things in my opinion. Yeah.
The idea with the cross-functional team is that it should function more like a small kind of early startup, right, where everybody's doing everything and you kind of solve it together. I think you still have the problem when in larger enterprises that you have to kind of anchor the vision and the kind of purpose of those teams into what you actually need and which processes to kind of change, and like changing processes and change in general is very hard, right?
But could you contrast Klarna versus Motherbrain versus now? Because even Klarna, in the end, you started like at 200, I guess.
Yeah.
You were number 200 somewhere in there.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
And when you left, how many were there in Klarna when you left?
Yeah, over 1,000. Yeah.
Okay, so the contrast when you started in Klarna 200 to when you left, the complexity of sort of making it work.
Yeah, I mean, Klarna was also like Spotify and still is, right, a very kind of engineering-focused organization. So
that's a good one. Good
yeah,
start.
it's a very good place to start, because you get to understand like all of these different kind of complexities and what you could potentially do with technology, right?
Yeah.
Could I just ask a crazy question here? Today, QA.tech is focused, and correct me if I'm wrong, but focused on finding bugs basically and making sure that the functionality of the web page is working properly. But let's say that you would like to expand QA.tech to say, I see the logging is working this way, but I want to add this functionality to it. And I just say, I want to add not only a Google login, I want to have a GitHub login as well added to it. And you tell QA.tech to generate the code for me to do so. So you can have a test-driven...
That could be a potential future, right? I think there is always a risk of trying to do everything at the same time.
Yes.
I think, but we've talked a lot about, like, at least there should be a set of best practices to do a lot of things, right? And if you're developing a login, then it should function in certain ways. Like it should handle the information in a way that is expected. If you have like a capital letter in the beginning or something that the phone automatically adds, right? Like it should still function to log in. And there's a lot of these kind of different best practices that is not always easy to kind of to get a hold of and know. And then if we can kind of connect the errors with information and help the users to kind of improve on those, then the next logical step would be to kind of suggest code to do that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you have normally the test-driven development type of programming is kind of well established, and you basically write the test before you write the code. But if you now can have AI that helps, for one, that you do to do the testing, what if you could simply have the user suggesting the functionality and then moving it back to the code, just as test-driven do, but actually using the AI to produce the code?
Yeah, and I think the AIs are really good at kind of evaluating themselves as well, right? Like in some way. So I think if you have something that generates code, you probably need some kind of counterpart that could help it know when it did something good or something bad to adapt. Like so if you try to write a function using ChatGPT and it kind of gives you code, and then you try to run it and it doesn't work, and you paste in the error, then it corrects itself, right?
Yeah.
So I think
this leads. I'm sorry to jump to a philosophical question now directly.
That's cool.
Let's do it.
But if you have, for one now that you already have a way to test if it works or not, but let's say you add a functionality to add new code to it, and do as you say. Let's say it doesn't work when you add the code, but then you have the original test functionality that fixes that code for you, and you just put it in a loop. Couldn't that?
Then you build something really crazy.
Now
potentially you can have users or even other agents creating their own functionality
together
without humans potentially involved.
I think you can do that. Like already today, there are kind of projects like GPT Engineer, for example, with Anton. That tries to generate like entire projects.
But it doesn't have a loop, though. I mean, it doesn't.
No, exactly. You need to kind of.
I see your point here, but because we are starting in the testing topic, it's the logical loop. If we start from the loop perspective first, you put the loop thinking very early on as a principle. It's an interesting thought. The testing is the looping start. Isn't that what you're saying right now? Did I get it right?
It's one part of the loop at least, and if that can fix bugs, and then you add generation to it, and that have bugs, and you have a testing that can fix the bugs, then it can just put it out.
But the way I hear this now, and I think this is interesting, so we're going to build a loop. Great. Where do we start the loop? How do we get the loop started? And instead of looking at starting the loop at the beginning, maybe the loop starts at the end, at the testing. That is the profound question.
But it could be using GPT Engineer to have the first part, and then you use the testing, and then it goes back and use GPT Engineer to just continue to do it, right?
Oh, crazy.
We have no idea what it would kind of end up with.
Where the fuck will we end up now?
But I think it's super interesting from an AI perspective, I think, to have this kind of reasoning loops. And we're utilizing things like that as well in order for the agents to actually kind of improve and understand things better over time. Which so there's a paper called Reflection. There's another one called Expel. There are a few of those that try to borrow more kind of traditional ideas from reinforcement learning, but using that with large language models, so that you have like one agent essentially evaluating the other one, and then kind of it reflects on its output, and then it takes that into the consideration next time it's running and so forth. So,
but let me can I do a little rabbit hole here, because this is let's almost continue from a philosophical point of view, but becoming actually super concrete. So digging into agent and building agents, and we are taking now your concrete topic now of agents for quality assurance or testing. In my opinion, when you build an agent, one of the most important questions to get right is the agent AI utility function. What is the objective? So here we are talking about, you're actually using LLMs even to frame the objective. Because I think the whole point with an agent, it goes either really good or you have unintended consequences, or you're fucking it up, or you're getting still in blind spot if you don't get your objectives right.
Of course.
So could we elaborate on the importance and how you deal with the setting objectives for an agent? How have you done that?
Yeah, so first of all, I think just doing it without any kind of validation is probably a recipe for disaster, right? So you need to make sure that the objective
and how do you validate? Because then you need to talk about objectives, but we also then need to talk immediately about validation. That's what you're saying.
Of course.
So these are two things, two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, of course. But because the way that you're phrasing the objective is very important in order for the agent to know what it's supposed to do, right? I think that's why different kind of prompting techniques like few shot and a lot of those, right, kind of shows you examples so that the agent understands what it's supposed to, or the kind of.
So elaborate on few shots for someone who doesn't know.
Few shot is essentially just when you the simplest case is like if you ask ChatGPT to do something. Like say that, for example, I have some input and I want to classify whether it's like positive or negative sentiment, for example. Then you just give them a few examples, like this is a positive sentence, this is a negative one, and then in the context, so in the same
so the
kind of
prompt,
window.
you give an example. You give examples.
Yeah, exactly, and then you give the actual kind of one that you want to classify and say like, oh, what about this one? And then it knows, because it sees examples, it understands especially like format and those kind of things are very important.
So basically, what you're saying, talk about your objective function. Are you doing this now? I guess.
Yeah. So the objectives are we're trying to make them as kind of easy to generate as possible. Of course, right? Yeah. So it needs to be kind of a free text and kind of a description of what it's supposed to do. But then we also give it examples on how it should think about evaluating whether or not it works.
Is this what the dev user should use in the US interface when he sets up the test? He needs to be able to set up the prompt.
We want to do that for them. So this is just so we have like, you can think of the problem in three different kind of buckets. So we have the agent, the main agent is just kind of tasked with trying to achieve an objective and then evaluate whether or not it succeeded. So that could be like log in with these specific credentials, right? And then it tries to do that, and then it looks at the history of what it has done and the kind of end state, and it realizes whether or not it actually functioned. Like, no, I got to this kind of error page instead, or yes, I'm now at the user dashboard, so I have logged in. But then the other buckets are about like this generation. So in order to know what kind of functionality exists on the web page, and also in the kind of planning and reasoning about the page, we are constructing like a graph that kind of explains the how different user journeys are kind of and what functionality is available. And using that graph and the different kind of things that we kind of discover on the page, we then generate these kinds of objectives for the agent to try and achieve.
But bottom line, you need to go to quite depth understanding how to set objectives and how to validate objectives, and you need to make that a really strong part of your software, of any software. I argue.
Yeah, exactly. So
that is agent oriented.
So currently we're focusing a lot on kind of this. In the validation flow is essentially that we generate things, but it also needs to be that kind of, even if it's a valid kind of objective, it still needs to be easy enough for the agent to actually succeed with, right? Otherwise, we can't ship it to a customer.
But can you see the risk, the inherent risk now when we start talking about AI agents, and we think maybe 2024 is the real year of the agent where this conversation will explode, right? If you don't get this right, if you're not understanding how to set up the right objectives and how to sort of understanding this is validation. This is going to be tricky.
But I don't think that changes too much from what ML has been for a long time, right?
Oh, that's
before you kind of try to optimize some specific hyperparameters, and you need to validate that they worked. Yeah, now your hyperparameters is like a string of text. So, but regardless, and I think of course you don't want to have flaky tests, right? You want the tests to be kind of functioning.
But to be honest, I'm coming from a point of view into this conversation where I see project after project after project with super lousy project goals and super lousy project views of what's supposed to be done. And from these lousy goals, someone is trying to distill out analytical objective functions, and it's literally bullshit the whole journey.
Yeah.
So I think the whole the whole piss poor project view of what is it that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Use gets accentuated, and I think you are now speaking to the converted, and you know, if you're deep into ML, you know it's not going to fucking work if you're not doing this right. But I think this is a major problem when people who are coming from a more traditional enterprise setting goes into this, that they are taking this way too lightly. I don't know.
I think it is. I think it's easy to fool yourself in two different ways. We're kind of slightly pivoted in the discussion, I think, but it's essentially like it's very easy today to test things like up front. So you could ask ChatGPT if it can answer something, and then it would give you a plausible answer, and then you would think like, okay, all right, we could do a production kind of deployment of this. That it's pretty far from that, because it's still just a proof of concept, and in order for the agents or like just the LLM at least to kind of take good decisions and answer in a good way, you need to phrase it in a very specific way to make it understand. It's all about the context going in, right? Yeah. So you have a very valid point.
Yeah. Do you understand? Do you think this is a problem?
Sorry, I got distracted by the phone, so I actually missed out on the discussion a bit.
So let's move on.
Yeah. Sure. Yes.
I have one nerdy question. A little bit, I don't know. Just curious about the tech stack, and then I think we could move into other topics that we have on the list. But could we get a sneak peek on what's the large language model that you're using, and what's the tech stack?
We're using several, and we want to be able to evaluate them kind of easily, because they work differently in different settings.
So you need to experiment, test.
But we're primarily used OpenAI models. Yeah. And then we've used the Google ones for some things, and then we've also experimented with other open source versions, like the Cog VLM, for example, which is like a visual. So
you haven't sort of zeroed in on one. You're still validating for different parts of this.
Yeah, I think like most people, primarily using GPT-4.
Yeah. Okay. So, but let's then zoom out one little bit. How are you thinking about open source versus not open source, and why?
But let's keep on the tech stack a bit more. I mean, the model is one thing, but so much more in the tech stack.
Thank you. All right.
We can go into this open source soon as well. I'm a huge open source proponent, but I think apart from that, we're using different kinds of kind of tech to solve different kinds of problems. We're very kind of TypeScript heavy, actually, because it's easier to build and integrate these models into kind of web application flow with that. We're using GraphQL to kind of communicate between different services. We have Python as well, of course.
But you have quite a bit of GraphQL, more than Python. Same.
No, I think in terms of lines of code, it's definitely Python. Like GraphQL is just like this communication layer, but and then we use Neo4j as well to represent this graph of the web pages.
So do you have graph database in the bottom here as well?
Yeah, we do use Postgres as well through this Superbase, which is like a Postgres on steroids with real time and stuff. Yeah.
And then you run it on some cloud service like Google or...
Yeah, we use it Google and Azure. We use both, but primarily
Why
Google.
Both? Why not one?
Because you get credits as a startup and different ones. So
do you use more like Lambda kind of services, or
we try to be as kind of managed as possible when it makes sense. So we use Cloud Run for a lot of things, for example.
So Cloud Run is
Lambda. We're talking serverless in different ways.
Cloud Run is like a managed Kubernetes that essentially runs your Docker containers for you.
So you want to run as feasible, highest abstraction level possible, or what? How would you phrase it for someone like me who doesn't understand?
Yeah, pretty much, right? You don't want to spend time on things that are already solved.
Okay,
right.
Done.
So that's kind of the point. So if you want to build things quickly, then embracing the cloud solutions makes it much easier to move fast.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one really powerful, of course, way of working when you can make use of all the tech stack that all the cloud providers do provide. So
you're sitting there jealous on this, I know.
It makes it easier to move fast, right? Like it depends on your constraints, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's time for AI News, brought to you by AIAW Podcast.
I don't think we really prepared Vilhelm for this new segment.
This was not the part like last time.
No. So this is fun. So we started a new segment that we call AI News. And we are trying to all pick apart, what happens in the AI news, because it's been so ridiculous in 2023, week by week. So week by week, what did we find that we want to share? And if but we didn't prepare Vilhelm this time, so you don't have to have a news. But if you had something that you want to sort of talk about, feel free. Mm-hmm. But today, I think you should start, Anders.
Yeah, I actually have a news topic that is very related to the podcast we're having. So Google just released a new Gemini powered. So Gemini is, of course, their latest DeepMind model. Yeah. That is getting actually very close to GPT-4 performance now. So
and which one is it? The Gemini?
They don't say. I guess it's Pro, but the middle version.
The middle version came all the way out in Europe now, or is that
that's
the point?
In Bard? You mean in Bard? But this is not in Bard. This is another service that they use actually for bug fixing, and they had previously released a software called OSS Fuzz. And it's basically an open source version of doing fuzz testing. So fuzz is basically, if I understand it correctly, basically trying to just have a numerous number of inputs, strange input to whatever function you're having, and seeing if you can find some kind of memory leak or bug that can be exploited as a security vulnerability.
It's very popular in the kind of functional programming paradigm, I think. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So doing this at scale is really hard, and they basically provide a service for open source projects that enable open source projects that don't have the resources to do this otherwise to do it for them, and for free as well. So what they added now, that when they added this kind of fuzz testing, you still have to have some kind of entry point, some kind of target that you put in the code, and that limits the coverage that the fuzz testing can have in the software product, as I understand it. What they've done now is actually use Gemini as well as a code generator to add more coverage in the code for doing fuzz testing. So with that, they can improve the coverage, and in that way do fuzz testing in a much broader way and find new potential security vulnerabilities. And when they tried that using the OSS Fuzz open source project they have, and I think they have around like 1,000 open source projects included in that already, and just tried it using the Gemini approach, which of course is much better than previous LLMs that they have used, they found, a huge number of additional bugs. But they also found 2 really big security vulnerabilities for some really popular libraries out there. Let's see if I can find the names of them. It was the CJSON library and libplist libraries, 2 really common libraries out there, and of course they were doing that the proper way and reporting the vulnerabilities to the maintainers before they released this information. But having the ability to use LLMs, similar to what you're doing, to find bugs using this kind of fuzz testing in a much more general way and without having humans having to enter the code for them, is really cool. In addition to that, once they found potential bugs or security vulnerabilities, they also, of course, try to fix that. So they used Gemini also to try to fix the bugs for them. Right?
How did it go?
So apparently they fixed 15% of the bugs they
Pretty
found.
good, actually.
And I think they found like thousands of bugs and then 2 really severe security vulnerabilities. And 15% of them could be fixed automatically. And I guess the others, at least they provided some hints with a code that could be useful for the engineers to fix the bugs for them as well.
This is a big deal.
That's really, really cool, I think.
It is cool. But if you think about that, I mean, like this whole race around AI and security, and where using AI for security is sort of on the virtuous circle here. Very interesting.
Well, this sounds awesome, right? It sounds like this is something very positive for our world, but you can look at the flip side on this and say this is a perfect tool for cyber attacks.
We think like that, of course.
So
why is that?
Now you have a way to use Gemini to find bugs and security vulnerabilities in projects, and you can do that at scale without having the skills to do that manually.
So could you, in theory, use this on someone else's?
Well, on open source projects.
On an open source project.
Yeah.
So or whatever code you have available.
Of course.
If you get the source code available to whatever project you have, you can put this in this tool, have Gemini to add the coverage of the code as much as you want, found the bugs in it, side. And then abuse it.
But that's always been the case, though, right? Like you always have this kind of red hat, white hat, black hat kind of dynamic, right? Where you have people that can exploit things, but then also at the same time it makes it easier to kind of.
But does it mean that we should not go for this, or do you think this is just we need to go for it, and that we need to be aware of the flip side?
I don't know, and the question is here that they do open source this. That makes it additionally questionable potentially. Or I know you're a proponent of open source.
So this is super positive, but it's a huge flip side that you're trying to push.
If it were released in a controlled way so people couldn't abuse it, then it would be no problem. But if they are releasing it as a free service that anyone can use without having any way.
But on the same side, you could say that then everybody can use it to kind of mitigate their vulnerabilities, right?
Yes,
it becomes an arms race. This is an arms race.
If you have a black hat person, not a white hat. A black hat is something that are deliberately looking for
exploits.
Yes. And how do you prevent them from being empowered by AI as you are here?
You can't anyway, right?
No, you can't anyway. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But if they didn't open source all the awesome research that I've done here, potentially it would be delayed a bit. I don't know the answer.
It would be, but then at the same time, like this small startup that doesn't have the resources either, they can't use it to kind of fix the bugs. Yeah.
Oh, it's a super hard.
I don't have the answer
here. It's a trolley dilemma.
It's just kind of speeding up more and more, I guess. Like the more tooling
you get. It's speeding up everything.
But it's the same kind of argument like LeCun is making for this kind of misinformation and kind of being able to filter misinformation and stuff.
Awesome news. Do you have another one?
No, it's fine.
Do you want to go next, Goran? Oh, yeah, I can go next.
I can do a filler. Just
do a filler.
Because
you always do a couple of short ones. So do a short one in between, and then you can do fillers.
One in between. So this is a filler. So just basically to point out on Gemini, this is 3 hours ago. So Google now permanently terminated the BARD, at least as a term, and put all of their features under the banner of Gemini. So now if you go to BARD, when you do the BARD, what is called user interface, it says Gemini.
So they're cleaning up their brand portfolio.
So you can see that they're ramping up for a huge fight here. So in the last couple of weeks, they have been just promoting new things almost daily. So I think they are gearing up for.
I guess we can see a Watson moment coming here. After IBM.
I have a news about that.
You mean Gemini is the new Watson in terms of naming everything? Gemini.
They are using the term Watson since the IBM in 2011.
They're still doing it. Yes. They're still doing it, and it's like I see this IBM. Come on. That brand is not good anymore.
Sure, but continue now with the news.
Okay, I have another one,
and then I will come back with the last one.
I have a news which are different. So, headlines: Norway to establish 4 to 6 new research centers for artificial intelligence and national coordination. So this is an article that you can find on Medium by Alex Moltzau that we want to have here on the pod. And basically,
he's coming on DIS, so
we're gonna have him on some of the conferences. But he's been doing an excellent job to basically objectively reporting on the AI strategy in Norway. So he's been following the whole process very, very diligently, and then basically taking excerpts out of what was discussed in Riksdagen, or I don't know the Norwegian word, and stuff like that. And then basically sucking out the core topics. And here now, the bottom line was that they actually, a couple of months back in the Norwegian budget, they highlighted we're going to earmark 1 billion Norwegian kroner for AI. And then at that point in time, it's very fluffy, right? What do we mean with 1 billion? Is it all hidden in the different departments' budgets? What is this billion all about? And here now he's actually quoting to like the actual board decisions. So they came to a decision where they have, if you find the article, you can sort of see what was written in the meeting minutes, and then basically it's quite clearly stated that will focus on 4 to 6 research centers. What that means, and story to unfold. But I just want to highlight.
Norway's going AI.
Norway is doing a good job, and
That's
Alex
cool.
is doing a fantastic job to sort of comment on it and making it transparent.
But we are also doing a good job. There was a new report this week that came out that we are missing 18,000 people per year.
Yeah, this is
And
another
IT.
news. I was thinking about that one and that one.
So it's
Should we
also
continue?
on that way. You're right.
No, but
we are pointing out on the problem. We are
yeah,
not fixing it.
we are pointing out problems, and here we're putting money where our mouth is in Norway, and then not only money where our mouth is, but also what is the money spent for? And I think we need to get concrete and stepwise now. I think they're doing an excellent job over there.
We will catch up.
We'll catch up. Okay, that was my news. Any comments on that? Any reflections?
Congrats.
Congrats.
Yeah. I think it's good that they're spending money on AI. It makes sense.
Yeah, but the point is that they are trying to be concrete about it, and and someone is then reporting on it in a very
Concrete
professional way.
is a wrong word. Actionable is like...
Actionable is better word.
Yeah.
Actionable is better word. Okay, that's it. Do you have any?
Cool.
Do you have any top of your head?
oh.
Because we sort of stumped you on this one.
Yeah, I read this paper about meta prompting recently, which was released it's probably not this week though.
Yeah,
I don't know how new it is.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's just an
for it.
interesting kind of concept of that when you're prompting a model in general, it's hard for the model to do like everything at the same time. So usually you have a lot of different kinds of asks in the same prompt, and a lot of different kinds of kind of instructions. So essentially the idea is that you can have this kind of framework to break it up and kind of make the models more performant. So they got like
prompting and stuff. Right?
yeah, exactly.
Or
Similar to
chain
it's a similar kind of idea. So it's a way to kind of break up the prompts into several parts of the meaning. So say for example, I'm asking GPT to answer some specific questions about and kind of extract information in different ways. Then it can kind of isolate the different parts and execute those, and then kind of combine the results in a nice way. And that increased performance of GPT-4 on a lot of different kinds of tasks.
Some sort of orchestration approach with the meta prompt and smaller. Is that what
exactly.
you're saying?
So yeah.
And is that just a way to prompt, or is it something? When you say meta prompt, is it just a way
They called it meta prompting in this paper. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I guess it's a way to prompt. Everything is a way to prompt, right?
Interesting. Have you heard about that before?
Yeah, I heard about it.
I haven't heard that term
I
before.
don't think it's this week. It's that this specific paper was a few weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah.
But we cannot cover it, so it's fine.
No, exactly.
It's good. All right, so I will finish it with just two of them. This week has been very boring for some reason. And you know that it's boring when the biggest news actually from last Thursday to this is that the European Parliament agreed on the AI Act. So now this is going to the Internal Market and Civil Liberties Committees of the European Parliament on the 13th of February.
So when that's the top news, that's boring week.
Yes, exactly. Which will be followed up with a plenary vote provisionally scheduled for 10th and 11th of April. And if this is agreed, the AI Act will enter into force 20 days after the publication, so exactly when Data Innovation Summit is in place. So I think this is going to overrun all the discussions about AI and generative AI. Everybody will be talking about this. And once it's in place, then basically the prohibited practices will start applying after 6 months, and obligation to the AI models will start after 1 year, and then you have an etc. So as I said many times, if you're investing in consulting companies, good for you, man. You're going to make so much money this year.
Consultancies for
Yeah,
legal
you can see it.
compliance.
Have you seen there's like so many AI experts are on LinkedIn these days? It's a beautiful thing. And I have a little bit. It's not a quiz, actually. It's a little bit of a... So... I was reading this article and thought it was funny. Not funny, actually, very insightful. And it says like, if you have to choose, okay, who will be winning the generative AI patent battle? And is it OpenAI? Is it Microsoft or Google? Who do you think? So we're talking about patents regarding generative AI.
I say Google.
Right? Vilhelm?
Oh my God. Feels like Microsoft.
All right.
Well, OpenAI and Microsoft are the same, basically. So,
Yeah.
but I don't think I have really hard time to figure out or to even understand that they are going into battle on this, because both of them are not really using it for offensive purposes. So
Yeah.
I don't
Exactly.
think
They rather have this kind of opponent, which would be Facebook in this,
Yes.
right? Like or Meta, right? They're kind of that's open sourcing everything. So.
yeah.
So, but what we're talking about patent battle in relation to patenting in the techniques, or what is the
Yeah,
patent?
but I mean,
Is
Google
that-
at least are open, saying they don't patent to be offensive or to take the offense in winning or conducting patent trials. They do it just for defensive purposes if they get attacked. And to my knowledge, Microsoft is doing the same. So that's why I'm a bit surprised on. So show the answer. Or
The right answer is IBM.
Yeah.
yes,
That's what I thought, right?
Oh, so
That-
fucking...
no, but that's true.
that
because none of
makes
them.
sense.
But
It's
then I was
IBM.
correct because neither of them.
Neither
right?
of them is going.
So
was-
actually, OpenAI has less than 5 patents applied, and I think that IBM has over.
Yeah.
Let's see where it was. It was here.
They are.
They've
somewhere.
also been going on patents for
I mean,
many,
come on,
many years,
yeah.
right?
Hundreds
Yeah.
of years.
IBM and Ericsson has been sort of churning out patents since 50
I think it was
years,
over
100 years back.
1,000, but let me find the topic.
So it's interesting because it sort of reflects a little bit about where they're coming from,
Yes,
to me as well.
So IFI claims patent services found that IBM holds 1,591 patent applications
Fuck me,
related to generative
So
AI, a
stupid.
third more than Google and more than double in number by field.
And is that reflecting on IBM being first, or they just being a patented
No, but
oriented
then,
culture?
what
But
is
they're not first on anything when it comes to generative
No,
AI,
but they're
right?
patenting culture. That's what it reflects.
But
Yes.
it's if you go a little bit, this is the most important part, basically what they are patenting on. So these are actually, as you can see, the biggest one is on computing arrangement based on biological models. This research is usually used to show the trends that are hot, upcoming, that can basically be a potential gains or winnings in a future.
So
right?
would artificial neural networks kind of go into the big bubble then?
Yeah. So
Or perhaps neuromorphic computing.
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking.
yeah, probably.
But neuromorphic is something IBM is kind of. Are they
Intel,
behind or
yeah,
they're
I'm
more
not sure, but-
quantum?
Mm.
They are in quantum, yes, unfortunately for them. But,
I mean, like, so
but
they're-
neuromorphic, I'm sure
so
they're
if you-
doing that
if you-
as well.
Yeah.
If you talk about IBM, they would rather want to talk about quantum than neuromorphic. There are other players that
They
want
have
to
big
talk.
bets in that.
Exactly.
Yeah. In any case, the first, so let's just list the top 5. So the first is IBM, second is Google, third is Microsoft, fourth is Samsung, and then Intel is
So
the
I
fifth.
was winning from how the
Together
first
with
question was
Adobe and etc.
framed.
And
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
said, like OpenAI is not even in the top 35 or something. It's actually, they are truly open, staying there. It's like less than 5 patents. So it's
For the
good.
first time, they are
Yes,
actually
exactly.
open. For the first time.
And with that, we conclude this boring news week.
Cool.
Cool.
Okay, should we move back to some question? Perhaps
I think we
pivot
should.
the topic a bit
Let's
and
pivot.
just ask a bit more about the general journey of a startup. And for people that want to take the same journey as you have just taken, there are a number of steps, I guess, one should take. You have a big of advantage because you've been working in the investor space and have a lot of connections there to people that could help you on that journey. But if you were to just say for someone that is they have the awesome idea of using generative AI for whatever, what should they do?
Well, first of all, I think it's good to just kind of talk to potential future customers, so get a little bit of an idea of of the market and understand if there is a problem that you're actually solving or if it's just something that you think is super cool. I think that's kind of a good place to start. Then, of course, having some kind of proof of concept in place is good because usually you need to demo something and not just talk about.
And you
big
do
ideas.
that before you have funding, I guess. And
I think so. That would be good.
Yes.
At least something, right?
Yes.
And then, of course, pull on your contacts and try. You probably know somebody who knows somebody who's at the VC, and if you want to take VC money, and then
Continue.
Because the alternatives here, either you just fund it yourself and go really lean in the beginning until you have something and build your own kind of revenue, or you take VC, or you take a loan in some way.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit on the pros and cons on what's the?
It also very much depends on the problem, right? So if you have some kind of idea in super deep tech, and it's going to require you to do a lot of hire a big team and kind of do research before you would even have one paying customer, then of course that requires you to take in a lot of money.
It's like the Mistral approach, taking hundreds of millions of dollars.
Exactly, I would highly recommend that. And then otherwise, I mean, if you have an idea that is pretty lean, and you think you can kind of start getting at least some idea of a customer and build on this idea, and then once that is in place, start scaling. Then maybe that's a better approach. At least
that's the best approach if you can take it.
If you can take it, I
think John Bosch said it really, really well. About when and how to think about VC, and he summarized it in one sentence for a lot of startups. I mean, I think the deep tech is an exception. Nail it before you scale it. So I think it's
a good saying.
I think it's a super good saying, because what are you going to use the money for? Are you even close to a product market fit? You should be able to do a lot of stuff to think about what is it that you want to scale up with money.
Yeah, and also what's your bottleneck? What are you,
exactly.
you're saying? What are you going to use the money for? Don't just take in money because you think it's good, and you need to have a pretty clear plan of what you need it for and why you need it.
And at least for infrastructure needs or computing or storage needs, you can get so much free credits anyway, right?
Yeah,
so
both Google and Azure and everybody is offering you free credits as especially AI startup these days. Because they want to attract you,
and they want to get you in there first. Yeah. But take your own example now, because the way you went or had to go was more or less a pre-seed, fairly early funding, even to get off the ground, right? Yeah. How was that?
I think that was at the stage when we wanted to start kind of building a little bit of a team, right? Yeah. So I think if you don't have any revenue, then employing people is expensive, right? So you need to kind of get in money in order in some way.
Someone needs to be an Elon Musk or an angel investor to put the money up for a team. And
there's a lot of pre-seed investors.
So this is a pre-seed investment in order to have the fundamental core basic team. And how big is your team now? 9, right?
Yeah.
9, right?
Exactly. No, but
because you can't really. You were 3 or 4 founders, but even to get going, you need a basic team, right?
But the more people you employ, the more costly it is.
Yeah.
Like the primary, like especially now that you have credits for all of the compute and stuff, that's the primary kind of cost for a startup that is like software based, right? Yeah.
And did you take VC money mainly to speed up, I guess, the production, or?
Yeah, we want to grow and kind of take market share, and we feel a little bit like there is a first mover advantage as well. So we want to kind of.
So it's not for marketing purposes; it's really for building the product, or is it for?
Yeah, it's totally for building product. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to have the team that we have now.
Yeah. So your pre-seeding money went to building the core engineering team, and then in later stages you will have the whole huge money investment to ramp things up in marketing and all that. But right now
we have a head of marketing that started
But from a core problem point of view, is to get to the first beta into the real customers, and therefore having the real feature set that is a real product. That's the number one goal right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
I mean, we need to get to the stage where we have paying customers. It's obviously the main goal. Yeah.
And just go through the terms here for people that are not familiar with it. So pre-seed money is one thing, then you get some seed money, and then you get some kind of Series A and whatnot.
Series A, B, C, and so forth. Like there's.
Give us a breakdown the way you think about it.
So I would say pre-seed is like before you have pretty much anything, right? Like maybe a proof of concept. Seed money is usually to start kind of building out like the team and the product and start getting to the point where you have like a more kind of paying customer base. Series A would be more like when you have a business that is functioning, and then you have like a lot of revenue already, right? And you kind of want to scale it.
Yeah, and
then the different rounds are more about like scaling.
Yeah. And then if we flip a little bit and look about the loan side.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is different types of loans. There's some types of loans you can get very, very early going to the bank, sort of almost like equivalent of the pre-seed stage.
Yeah.
And then there is other types of loans.
Usually it's easier to get loans if you have revenue, right?
Yeah, so and that's what I was alluding to. Then you have other types of loans that you kind of need to have a critical mass. You need to have a customer. You need to have some metrics, and then you can get loans based on those metrics.
Yes.
And perhaps you should mention your previous colleague as well that has been on this podcast, Henrik Landgren, that has his new investment or financing, perhaps is a better term, company called Arc Capital.
Not anymore.
Just changed name.
They changed names. Very important.
Right.
What's the new name?
Gillian.
Gillian.
Yeah, Billion Gillian.
Gillian.
Yes, Gillian.
So
right.
Our capital no more, Gillian.
Thank you.
It's also my old colleague Elin Bäcklund as well. Which is
So Elin, you work with Elin, and now it's Henrik and Elin, and who else is in Gillian?
They're a pretty big team now.
There's a big team now, yeah.
It's 80 people, I think.
Yeah, they scale fast.
So would you consider doing the financing approach instead of the VC approach?
I can't speculate on that. I think I mean it kind of depends on the different strategies. I think at this stage we haven't really kind of focused on building revenue early, so we're kind of still building a lot of product in order to start to scale it. Right.
So your model where it is right now is simply out of their loaning model because you need to have the
I think
metrics.
so. You need to have predictable revenue. Yeah, exactly.
But you plan to take some seed or Series A in the future?
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
And can we? Okay. What is your ideas on how to think about finding a good VC partnership? So right now, when you had you have friends and you managed to find a really nice partner, but how would you advise around? I want to go down the VC route. How to think here about finding the right VC partner for you?
I mean, this is it's hard, right? Yeah. I think it boils down to finding somebody that believes in your kind of vision, right? So make it as easy and like little complications as possible, like no preference structures or anything in the beginning. Just kind of make it a collaboration that you kind of build together, right? So if you have a VC that believes in you and wants to help you, but are kind of very open-minded, I think that is a very good kind of starting point.
Let me sharpen it. I mean, like there's another term in here, another type of VC. We talk about an angel investor. Mm-hmm. So you go,
That's great for broadening your network and stuff.
And how would you define an angel investor? Is more like a person.
It's a person, yeah.
Who's sort of putting up the capital versus a fund.
It could be like you. You could be an angel investor,
Yeah.
like if you put your money into a startup.
And how would you differentiate the benefits, or how to think about angel investors versus VC, more from a fund?
Usually, angel investors are not able to make as large tickets as a fund, right? Because they have to invest their own money.
Then you go out and if you find 10 angels,
Sure,
it's one way of
sure,
doing
that
it.
could definitely be a good way. I think what angels open up is their network, right? They usually have interesting expertise. They've kind of maybe run similar startups before, and then they also know a lot of people, especially in the VC kind of landscape, right?
So it sort of opens up one of the key tips and tricks around choosing your angel or VC. It's not only about the partnership per se, which is, I think you mentioned, and tick that box as the number one box, but it can also has something to do with like, what is their ecosystem all about? And how does my product and my idea fit into their ecosystem? So I give the example, maybe there's a strong e-commerce ecosystem, or there's a strong B2B manufacturing ecosystem, or green tech ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean,
and that kind of matters.
That matters a lot, right? Because I think that's part the same thing as kind of finding an investor that fits your kind of vision, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're building something, if you're building an e-com solution and you have some kind of healthcare investor, they're not going to give you good advice. It's kind of maybe they do, but
the network to tap into, which I think is a key point of one of the key benefits.
Exactly.
Since you have a unique background as well, and in actually evaluating startups. If you were to make your startup now as attractable as possible for investors,
I hope we're scoring very high on the investor scoring.
you know the Motherbrain algorithm. So
the algorithm is now if QA.tech, then
if QA.tech, then give 100 million.
Yeah. No,
some insights. What are the ways? Either in way of recruiting the team, the product, the market fit, or whatever, what would be the key ingredients you would say for
to be attractive? Yeah.
I think it's slightly different depending on this stage, right? But in general, showing that you have a product market fit is super important. Like that you have kind of maybe quotes or like reviews or something about your early product, like that will definitely help. And then the team is like super key. Like when we evaluated startups, team is always like very central. Like, have they done similar journeys before? Who do they know? Like anything that could potentially help them succeed in their mission. I think that's more important than the actual kind of business idea, because usually you have to pivot a little bit, like and all of these things. But then of course, like
so
the more mature you get, like go to market strategy, like all of these things.
But if you would rank this, would you say that the team sort of shows up the highest in the algorithm, so to speak, or very high? I
don't think I can speak about AKT's algorithm.
No. I was using that as a metaphor, but you don't. Yeah.
I think the team is super important. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And how do you make a team attractive then? What are you looking for in a team?
I think you should focus on making it good. Like that will make it attractive.
But it's the complementary skills and the network they have. What is the criteria for a high score on teams?
What's very important when kind of evaluating that, I think, is that you have some kind of similar experience. Because if you're like a set of people that have very little experience from the same kind of
domain experience
and kind of and that could also be about experience from similar sized companies and similar kind of growth trajectories, right? So if you have somebody on the team that has done this before and successfully, right? Or even if they didn't succeed, it's still kind of meriting, because they know so much of those kind of traps that you don't have to fall into again, right? So I think
domain, but also on problem understanding, problem of the solving, but also problem of the trajectory that your particular.
Don't forget the tech.
And the tech.
And the tech, of course.
And the tech. I forgot about that.
You always do.
On purpose.
And everybody forgets the sales and marketing, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is also Jan Bosch's famous quote that tech companies trying to underestimate. It's easy to underestimate that facet of the pie, sort of think. What do you think about that comment?
The facet of the pie, I didn't understand it.
The facet of the pie, what are the ingredients, to succeed as a startup? As a tech startup, our product is so beautiful, so we don't need sales.
Yeah, I think you need everything. It's easy to be kind of arrogant in your specific domain, right? Like if you're a developer, then you think that you only need developers to actually build something, but you also need sales to sell it. You need marketing to make it show to the world.
The whole meta, the go-to-market, the meta product is not only the core technology, but it's the whole thing that needs to fly.
Yeah, totally right.
Yeah.
It's also why it's successful with cross-functional teams that we talked about before. It's because you bring like the diversity of different minds together and then solve it together. Yeah.
So I guess then, the team is important, but that means also that recruitment, I guess, is important for startups going, long term. Do you have any thoughts about how to make your startup as attractive as possible to be able to recruit and also keep and retain talents in the startup?
I think in general, in regards to kind of attracting and retaining talent, it's about like having an interesting opportunity for them to work on and treating your team with respect, creating a kind of healthy environment where ideas are welcome and you kind of have fun together. I think if you do those things, you're going to retain your talent.
What do you need? Purpose, mastery, autonomy, fun.
Exactly. Sounds good. It's a good list. Wouldn't you sign up for that, right?
Yeah, I would sign up for that.
I think, but then of course it kind of depends on your business model. I think we're a little lucky in the sense that we're building agents in 2024. I think it's it's a very interesting area. Yeah.
Hot.
Awesome. Time is flying away, and perhaps we should move a bit closer, not to the end, but to some more philosophical questions. And
not maybe philosophical, but zooming out one step further. I mean, maybe that is philosophical. Which one were you thinking about? I have a couple.
I was thinking like the future of software development.
Yeah, this is the same. But I don't think it's philosophical because you're speculating. Yeah. But I think it's super concrete in another way.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go there.
Okay, let's see if we can phrase it as a question. But of course, now having AI-driven QA is one step into the future of software development, and we have ChatGPTs and Bards, Geminis, I should be called nowadays, not Bard, that is being extremely useful and basically 10xing every developer in producing code and building software. But I guess it will come a point where the AI becomes not only, or even becomes like a majority of the key component, and the human become more of a reviewer, to the point where potentially the process of software development is completely automated, as we spoke about before. What do you think? How do you see the future of software developing and unfolding?
I think it's very interesting because the more stuff you offload on AI, the less you understand as well, right? Like it's easy to kind of forget about best practices and kind of deep code understanding and all of these things, right? So I think we're definitely heading the way where we kind of become more and more advanced and automated. But I think people like to understand and challenge themselves. So I think I don't see us kind of only lying on the beach. I think the AI also wants to lie on the beach at some point. But it's kind of.
But I think you're pushing in a good nerve here, because some people has I'm a coder identity, and really that's mastery, purpose, autonomy, and I'm an engineer. So just because I have AI coming out of my ears and everything can be automated, I bet you people still want to identify themselves as engineers.
Yeah.
So what does that mean then? Because
I don't think the profession is going away though.
No, that's what I mean, right? So basically...
But will the programming language of the future be English?
No, I don't think so.
No?
Not only. I think it will always be a way to communicate. Like even if you have like a team of agents that helps you code and build things together, I don't think you would sit there only chatting to your engineering team on Slack and hoping that they will build it for you. I think you will, if you're interested in coding, I think you will be part of that.
So, but that becomes that opens up the next topic then of transparency and be able to interact with the code at all when it's all down.
When it's all kind of super crazy AI generated code that nobody understands, that will be a problem.
But okay.
But perhaps, I mean, if you take the QA.tech kind of approach and focusing on the interface and what the user sees, and if you were to add a prompt later in your service saying, please move this button in this way, or add this kind of additional functionality to it, could the engineering practice move in that direction? So,
but I think so too. And when you think about it, it's not like moving the buttons that are the most interesting kind of problems for an engineer, right? Usually engineers like to tackle kind of problems and think about how to solve different kind of things, right? It's not only writing the exact like JavaScript or a kind of component, right? So I think that component will still be there. I think how you kind of actually write code and how you do different things might change, like will definitely change, I think. But being part of the kind of problem solving and like, tactical puzzle is.
But like, let's test a little bit. Like I listened, I can't remember which podcast it was. If it was Lex Fridman with Elon Musk or whoever it was. Yeah. I think it was Elon Musk. I want to test his view on this. The more AI we have, the more capability we have, the limit of what type of super complex problem we can try to tackle shifts.
No, it doesn't. It shifts in some ways, but people still love playing chess. Like, kind of depends on what you like to do, right? It's
I retract my question and frame it differently. So as an engineer, we can start tackling more grand challenges. So take the example of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. A grand challenge, we're going to put people on Mars. It's extremely super complex and it's so multidimensional in as an engineering quest, right? Yeah. So in order to be able to scratch the surface on the real problem of going to Mars, we will need a shitload of AI to take us out of the mundane problems into think about engineering problems, but now on a super much high complexity level.
Yeah.
What do you think about that sort of framing?
But it's the same kind of analogy as like we talked about before with like running an engineering team is a different thing than writing code, right?
Yes.
And I think being part of the puzzle and not having to do like all of those repetitive tasks and being faster and being able to push things and build new technology, that's definitely going to make us move faster.
Because we're going to we're going to get away from the mundane problems to the complex, interesting problems as an engineer.
Yeah.
It's one way of looking at it.
Yeah. And maybe like debugging your code because it behaves in a slightly weirder way than you thought it would, and like having race conditions and all of these kind of strange things that is maybe not the engineer's favorite task to do
anyway.
Right? No, right? So, like but then like what happens after that when AI is more kind of part of setting the goals and kind of thinking about the more complicated things, then we're talking more about like super intelligence and those kind of things.
Okay, if you because now we took it to a lot of AI, but then the next level of software when we have super intelligence or when we're not even that's a different story again, I guess.
Then it's harder to kind of hypothesize about what it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
If it's super intelligence, then
they can go to Mars.
Yes.
Yeah, but I guess one way to see it is basically that today software development is limited to the few people that actually gone through the education of doing that and spend a lot of time learning the craft, so to speak. And perhaps with AI, so many people can actually start to build software, and that can be a really good thing. So many more people can build stuff, and that can increase the number of products and services that we have in our world, and perhaps that is the way forward to what Elon Musk calls the world of abundance, where we have so many products and services.
No, but this is
sorry.
You go first.
No, I think one thing that is super interesting in this is when you think about some of the problems that you usually encounter, like integrating between different services and those kind of things. If you kind of envision what AI could potentially help out with, is like building integrations like this. So maybe you would rather say than kind of, okay, I need this kind of integration to, I don't know, Probably not Salesforce at that point, but you. So maybe that is the case. And
No,
then that kind of AI writes that kind of integration automatically, and just essentially contacts the other firm and kind of writes the code together with their AI, right? It's kind of interesting kind of perspective.
But let me now take that and then put that in a very concrete perspective in the news. Goran, there was this news article, I think this week. That was one of the AI news we didn't take. There's been new reports on how many engineers do we need in Sweden for the next years, and the figure has gone up to 100,000.
Yeah, but that was the report that was.
You mentioned it briefly, but I want to take it into this conversation now.
Tech Sweden basically created published a new report, which is in general saying that by 2028, I believe it was, that we will be in need of 100,000 tech professionals in Sweden, which means, or maybe it was 2030, which is basically that every year we need to get around 18,000.
18,000 more software.
Year.
And it was predominantly software engineers of different kinds.
No, it was
all engineers.
It was in tech. So
tech.
it's established. It's the report says that we are currently having a workforce in the tech around 200,000 in Sweden, and that needs to be increased. There is a demand for that to increase up till 300,000, which is not very different from what DIG report did, like in
70,000, I think they said.
Yeah, I believe it was 77,000 in 2020 or 2019. Maybe it was the report. Yeah, but in general, we are in need of tech.
Okay, so that was the context. So now we take that context of 100,000 new engineers until 2028, and then we flip that into the conversation of what will software development of the future look like. So now let's go back from super macro into sort of what is the software development evolution to, let's say 2030 or 2028, to use the same number. And then think about what is the profile of those 100,000? Is it the same as we've had? Or can we now expand the recruitment and talent pool in different ways? What should we then look for? What do we mean with an engineer or a software development engineer that reaches those numbers? I think that is very interesting that we can't look backwards. No. We can't look backwards into this statistic. We need to look forward to understand that statistic. Can we do that a little bit?
Yeah. Super interesting, and goes against feeling like we would be replaced in any way, right?
Exactly.
But I think we talked about it slightly before as well. I think the need for different kinds of specialized kind of engineers is changing a little bit. I think already today, like if you're working with AI, then maybe the skills today is not the same as it was kind of in the requirements like a few years ago, because now it's much more about like being able to call APIs and store things in databases and juggle the data around, right? And I think we will continuously see stuff shifting like this, but in order to be able kind of to stay relevant with the trend, I think it's very important just to have this kind of, I don't know if the right term, but the hacker mindset, right? Yeah. You just like to kind of attack different things and learn and kind of continuously explore. Exactly.
Experiment.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's super important, and not be so afraid to kind of try things, but rather like just go head first and try to build whatever, and use the AI tooling that is available to learn and kind of and go deeper.
What do you think, Anders? How would you, if you want to answer, you're responsible to get 100,000 people into Sweden to 2028, 18,000 per year, knowing what you know and knowing the trajectory. What is it that we need? What is the engineer for the next 5-6 years?
I don't know. No, but I think core grasp of the basics is getting increasingly important. If you have just understanding the basics of science, of physics, of math, I think will continue to be super important.
That doesn't go away, exactly.
Rather than knowing, even though I like TypeScript or I actually love, programming different ways, that will change a lot in the future. But if you know the basic, you will stay current and be able to do awesome things.
So the whole CV talent recruitment, do you know .NET 1.3? how relevant is that in this?
But I don't like to think of it like when I'm recruiting, I don't necessarily look for a specific kind of programming skill. I look more for the mindset in general.
This is what I mean, right?
Yeah, I think being if you're curious and kind of try different things and learn and adapt, and that kind of goes to the point where you're saying, like, if you know the basics of math and physics and then.
So how do you recruit?
Which is a core in kind of engineering and kind of education. It's not that I'm working with physics, but then you understand problem solving and you have a kind of a curious mindset about understanding the world. So we're talking about
recruiting for the engineering mindset, recruiting for the hacker mindset, rather than the CV engineering of
or basically what intelligence really is about, I would say.
Yes, that definition.
Yes.
Problem solving, right?
Or skill acquisition efficiency. I think that is the proper way to
skill acquisition efficiency is a good metric.
Okay, anyway, the really philosophical question then. Assuming that superintelligence will arrive in AGI that is potentially so much more intelligent than all humans combined, what kind of world do you think we will have? Will we have the dystopian nightmare of Terminator and the Matrix and the machine trying to kill us all, humans? Or more of a utopian paradise where humans are free to not work 40 hours a week, but perhaps 10 hours a week, or not at all if they don't want to, and still have an awesome time pursuing their happiness and creativity?
I'm more on the kind of positive side of things in general, but
as everyone on this podcast is.
Too boring.
It's surprising.
No doomers, not many doomers so far.
But I think
haven't had Max Tegmark yet.
No, we need him.
You need him here. But I think it kind of depends on what you think about. Like, superintelligence is such a fluffy, weird term where we kind of paint a very intelligent species in the picture of ourselves. Like I think, and like sci-fi has been doing this for forever, right? Yeah, it's kind of, and then painting this picture of like AI having this kind of goal of like destroying all or enslaving humanity is like, it's very narrow-minded. I think
it's good. It's good entertainment. That's all it is.
Oh, it's great. It's entertainment. I love it.
But it's also annoying that the media and everyone else is focusing so much on it.
Yes,
isn't it?
Yes. I guess that's why you have so many positive kind of guests here.
We should have more journalists on them, perhaps.
But how do you see that? Let me go harder. Do you believe in this sort of singularity point, or something will go that where sort of we lose the control, or something like that?
I mean, it's very hard to kind of to say that you don't believe in it at all, right? Like, there is definitely a possibility about kind of machines improving themselves and kind of this whole kind of thing. That they would.
But is that the plausible?
But they would move towards a scenario where like they're a part of like this evolutionary kind of ecosystem kind of approach is very improbable in my head. Like we as a species have been fostered by evolution and kind of death and life for such like forever, right? Like that's what we are as entities. Even if you give like a machine the possibility to improve themselves, why would they behave like that? Like I think that's very improbable, actually.
Yeah, agreed.
You also, I mean, like, so why would they do that?
We are more intelligent than so many other species on the Earth. We don't kill them, do we? What's the evidence?
I mean, we killed most of the animals in the world. There is nothing left.
We do not kill most of the animals.
No, they die, and then we.
Very far from.
Yeah.
Very far from.
They die by. They're extinct by themselves.
Yes.
But
okay, let's take another super fun question. I'm very much inspired by Max Tegmark's book here. These questions, Life 3.0. I think it's fun. If we believe that this trajectory towards superintelligence, do you believe it's going to be a very slow, a sort of an evolutionary progression that is sort of we're going to look back, oh shit, we passed the general intelligence couple, or do you think there will be some sort of extreme spike where something exponentially rapidly, the super fast scenario, so to speak? So it's the evolutionary scenario. Fast takeoff scenario. Will we? Do you believe in a fast takeoff scenario, or how do you understand it?
I think we're part of that journey, right? When you think about it, like everything we do and all the resources we put into this is like is about like making ourselves more efficient or kind of reaching some kind of weird higher goal that we have as a species, right? And I think as AI is kind of evolving with this, we're using it to solve our different kinds of problems. I think when you think about it from a really fast takeoff thing, is more when they would start kind of evolving themselves, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And then it gets more to be a question about like what kind of intelligence are we looking at then, and what kind of goals or kind of inherent kind of trajectories are they kind of aiming for. You could have a system that improves itself and only cares about like the byte code in a weird kind of integration layer at some point that doesn't really affect you, right? Or you could have a kind of somebody that wants just to be on the beach and then kind of enslaves you, and you have to do all the QA testing in the future.
What do you think about the next GPT then? Do you believe in the Q-star kind of algorithm, adding reasoning to GPT-4 that makes it potentially an AGI candidate?
No, I don't. I also think the AGI concept is starting to get a little bit overloaded.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right. It's kind of, or at least kind of watered down, or whatever you say, right? It's kind of, it feels like it was the same with AI, the AI term, like a couple of years ago, when everybody was talking about machine learning, and then suddenly you slapped AI on it instead, and then talked about the same thing, but it's more like of a system thinking and so forth. Right?
I like what Sam Altman has started to speak more about in recent, at least months, and saying that, sure, AGI will come, but it will not have the great impact that people are speculating on humanity. We will adapt. And he basically compared it to when they released GPT-3 or 4. It was a big turmoil for like 2 weeks, and then people said, well, this is part of our life now.
But this very much boils down to how we then have put the definition at that point towards what is AGI, what is artificial general intelligence, and then I think if you're referring to this, then something which is human-like,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of weird, right? Like, why would it work like a human? It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense to even reflect.
But what I'm thinking already, when you think about the capabilities that you see in models today, they're extraordinary, right? We're surpassing kind of humans in a lot of different kinds of angles and ways, right? When you think about it from the kind of general standpoint, it should be that it could do like a lot of different kinds of things. ChatGPT can answer things about quantum mechanics, kind of marketing, and how to clean your house, right? It's
not drive your car.
No, it can't drive my car.
So you get back to the core topic of what is generality and what is autonomous
and what's intelligence, right?
And what is intelligence, and then we get back to, I think, the JEPA paper, Jan LeCun, and the story we've been trying to dissect what is the different components of what would make something a general intelligence, and I think that is a quite interesting topic then, because you need to really broaden the definition based on what it knows or can answer.
But what I think definitely will happen, it will be a model that is better at kind of taking instructions and will work in more different kinds of modalities.
Yeah,
like that makes all the sense, right?
But it's the whole planning and control and all that things that needs to be added to this, of course, to talk about.
But also, like, still, the models as they are today are very transactional, right? Like you don't like people especially in media talk about them as being entities. Yeah. They're not entities at all. They're very transactional. It's just like one pass through a network.
One task.
And then in order to get them to behave more like an entity, you have to do a lot of kind of fixing and wiggling and saving and kind of doing a lot of these things, right?
Adding memory to it.
Yeah, exactly.
But could we go back a little bit? I think this is an interesting one when we had Jesper talking about this. How would we define an autonomous agent? I mean, like, because now in one way, QA.tech is building an agent, as a way. But I mean, like, for me, it's the difference. Like, can we perform one task versus having an objective analyzing and planning a sequence of tasks and then performing that. And this is now a little bit, So I think this whole, how do we define an agent, an autonomous agent?
I think the agent kind of definition is that it needs to be able to interact with its environment.
Yeah.
Right. And then in it being autonomous, it needs to be able to take decisions by itself in some way. Right.
So it's some sort of, because you can then, you could argument
simple definition. There is much more kind of.
You could argue about super narrow, but then of course you get to this whole planning and reasoning about what steps to take and then be able to take and execute.
Yeah, right. But like Meta developed this system called Cicero that beat humanity in, or at least most people in diplomacy, which is like this very human game where it's all about like talking to each other, and that's a composition of different kinds of models, right? Like you have like one planning system, you have like one language model, and like a lot of these different components working together. And I don't see us kind of having something that is just solving all of those different kinds of problems automatically, right? You need to compose different kind of things. And I think that will still be the case with GPT-5. Yeah.
Listen to John LeCun, the JEPA paper.
Yeah, because so is it one big model or is it orchestration of several things? We go, this is so many funny things.
Yeah. You have this. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Please.
You also have this kind of active inference kind of setting there. They try to kind of go back to more of this Bayesian kind of modeling approach where you try to predict your environment and then kind of all act more about. It's more about like more animal-like entity with a function, right? That you can try to interact with your environment and don't necessarily have one specific goal. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So many things to speak more about, and I hope we can continue after the cameras have turned off. But for that, I would love to thank you very much for coming here again. Let's see if I can say the name properly now. Vilhelm von
Ehrenheim. It's good.
It is easy.
Yes. It was a true pleasure to have you here again, and I wish you the very best of luck with QA.tech. I'm sure you will do very well with that going forward.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Vilhelm.